Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patti LuPone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Hello, listener. This is Alan Seals, and you're listening to the Theater Podcast. Today's guest is Jared Grimes, who has a phenomenal story of being born in New York, going to North Carolina around the age of 6, then coming back up to New York City off and on to start performing, because that's the passion that was the burning in his heart. At 16, was tap dancing all over the New York City subway system. And fast forward a couple of years, he's working for Mariah Carey as a backup dancer. Fast forward a couple more years, and now he's on Broadway, and he's a Tony nominee for his role in Funny Girl. So, just like everybody's story, he does this for the love of performing. The way he talks about performing, they talk about dancing, he just goes to this internal place. The need for dancing, the need for performing just burns inside him. And he does it for him. He does it because he has to, not because of any other reason. It's such a beautiful thing to listen to him talk about it. And one of the other things that stuck out to me about the interview was at the end, one of the 3 closing questions was, what advice would you give to your younger self? He was like, find your purpose. Find your purpose. And the way he went into it, the reason behind it was just beautiful. I'll let him tell it. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I do. Find me online, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and leave a rating, leave a review, all the normal stuff that I say before every episode. And everybody now, please enjoy this episode with Jared Grimes.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest is a world-renowned quadruple threat, a tap dancer, actor, singer, and choreographer. He started out dancing in the New York City subway when he was just 16 before he landed a gig as a backup dancer for Mariah Carey. And then when he was just 24, became the youngest solo choreographer in Cirque du Soleil history for his theatrical show, Banana Shpeel. He is currently starring in the much-anticipated Broadway revival of Funny Girl, but in addition to Funny Girl, in which he plays the character of Eddie, he is also a well-known cult leader, Adrian Shannon, on the Netflix hit Manifest, which is currently filming its 4th season, and is seemingly bouncing effortlessly between the Broadway, television, and dance worlds. And to top it all off, he just received a 2022 Tony nomination. Holy crap, Jared Grimes, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Thank you so much, man. I'm super glad to be here.
Dude, Manifest, God, that show just does it for me. I don't know what it is. It's the sci-fi, it's the time travel. You put anything like, maybe it's the time travel and airplanes, 2 things that I love. And then all of a sudden, I just love it. But anyway, we're going to get into that because holy shit. But tell me about where you grew up, because I assume you're a New York kid, being that you were dancing in the subway when you were 16, yeah?
Yeah, I grew up in Jamaica, Queens, New York, but I was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York, and I moved to North Carolina when I was 6.
What part?
So I got the best of both worlds, Southern hospitality and that, aggressive, New York nature. So I'm a country boy at heart with the weaponry of a city boy. And when I mean weaponry, I mean just attack mode when it comes to the gifts that I've been given. I don't shy away from that at all. With the humble nature of a Southern, boy. So it's a perfect mix. And I came back to New York in 2000, or actually before I came back to New York in 2001, my mom would bring me up to New York for different classes and auditions and stuff like that, workshops, just to see family and whatnot. And around the time where, we knew I was either going to go to LA or New York for college, she started bringing me up and then leaving me with, family, friends, or just friends of hers or friends of mine. I would stay with them. They might be in college already, so I might crash at the dorm or something like that. And, that's around 16, that's when I was like, all right, cool. Well, what are we doing on this trip? And they're like, oh, we're going to perform. I was like, oh, okay, what theater? They're like, oh, the subway. So I was like, hey, let's get it. Yeah, I was like, let's get it. They were only a couple of years older than me. We're talking about, they were freshmen and sophomores in college too. So we were all around the same age. They were just on their own more so. And so just kind of going down there with friends and just kind of laying a board down, and, you know, they got the drumsticks out, they're drumming, you know, on the buckets, and we're just, you know, having the time of our lives. That was, you know, kind of like my first, you know, on my own New York experience in terms of like performing, you know, without my mom being by my side or my dad, you know, being, you know, in the audience. Like, you know, we were just running around the city, and we would just make any corner of the stage, any subway platform the stage. We particularly loved to perform in front of the ESPN Zone restaurant when it was on 42nd Street. So I would always be able to like, man, I can perform and I can look in the window and watch the game at the same time. Like it's the best of both worlds. So
That's really interesting. And I actually had this conversation with somebody the other day that it was Elizabeth Teeter, actually, because she came up on her own. You know, she's in Beetlejuice now as Lydia, came up on her own. And when she was 14 and was set out loose on the city. And I'm from North Carolina, too. So that's why I was asking what part you moved to. So, yeah.
High Point.
Yeah. So from North Carolina. And when you come up here, especially in a place with North Carolina, where there's no public transportation, it's all country. I mean, for the most part, you need a car pretty much everywhere else. You come up here at 14, 16, and all of a sudden you can go anywhere anyone of any age can go. Then your world just opens up in a way that is so unique to New York City. And I absolutely love that about this city. And I love that about your story too, because I assume down in North Carolina, you were a big fish in a small pond. And then you come up here and you're like, okay, here we go. What theater are we performing in? Oh, the subway? Cool. Okay. So why is everybody ignoring me? Like, what's going on at this point?
I mean, just, you know, it's funny is that trying to earn the respect of a New Yorker who has no time for anything, and they're usually always late anywhere. And even if they're on time, they move like they're late. The game quickly became, how can I get you to give me a little bit of your time? You know, by just performing, tap dancing, you know, enjoying what I'm passionate about. How can that get me to get you to give me the time of day when you have no time?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we would go down there, or we would go to the, you know, our favorite spots. And, you know, I'd close my eyes and I would just go. And, you know, sometimes you would look up and there's 15 people. Sometimes you would look up, there's 2 people. Sometimes you would look up and there's 100, you know, crowded around the sidewalk. So it just became about how much can I like share? How much can I get you to, you know, to evolve with me, love with me, be passionate about something, you know, with me in that moment. It was crazy. It was crazy. Being a young kid, I think that's what really, you know, solidified that I wanted to come to New York and pursue all of this. Cause I was like, all right, well, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to perform no matter what, whether, you know, I pursue and achieve a lot of my goals, or, you know, if I don't quite get that, I'll always be able to share what I'm passionate about. Cause, you know, dancing in the subway, or, you know, just dancing around New York City, I mean, that's the rawest form of being able to, you know, to entertain people. And I still get that itch. It's funny because I'll be walking around and I'll pass the subway, and there hasn't been a day since I started doing that I haven't been like, man, I got 15 minutes, man, I could just lace them up right now and just go at it real quick. But you know, I haven't performed, you know, in the subway probably since like 2003. They started to do the whole, like, you had to have a permit to perform down there and everything. So I kind of, once they started to stiffen the rules a little bit on artistic creativity in the subway, I was like, it kind of killed it for me a little bit. So I took all of that stuff, and around that time I started to work a little bit more anyway. You know, I took all those, you know, those experiences, and I just kind of translated them to the stage or to the camera. And, you know, I felt like it gave me advantages that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Yeah, I have a lot of that raw and that like unbridled aggression and that just like craving and yearning and just, you know, then when you go down in the subway, man, it's like, woo, it's like Gladiator. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Yeah.
It feels like that, man. It's like, it's just a different type of, you know, I can go down there with a tank top on too. Like, I don't have to wear a tux and tails, or I don't have to, you know, wear a particular costume. I can go down there in a tank top and basketball shorts and Nike high socks and rock for like 5 hours and just me and that, in my true essence, that's enough, in the subway, to where in other situations you might have to think about it a little bit more. Or I could just stop dancing and go talk to a young boy or a young girl who, are shaking their feet and dancing because they're excited about what I'm doing. I could just stop and just have a conversation and hopefully change that, young child's life. Hopefully change everybody's lives, especially if they're just onlookers or just walking by in some way, shape, or form. If they see me freely and with all the love in the world, just doing something that I'm super passionate about, then in some way, shape, or form, that gives them a little bit more fuel in the tank to, achieve whatever goal, they have in mind, or whatever hurdle they're trying to get over. Hopefully in some way they would see me down there. That would help them, strive for greatness in their own way.
You said something a second ago that stuck with me, that you'd start dancing, you'd close your eyes, and sometimes it'd be 2 people, sometimes it'd be 10, sometimes it'd be 100. So you're out there, you're dancing for you. You're doing this. And you said that right at the end of when you were just talking, that it's about your passion and your passion for dancing and performing. And you're out there and you just close your eyes and you just start going. And then if anybody else is watching, that's a benefit. And then they throw you a couple bucks and it helps pay your bills, right? But what do you remember? What came first when you were a kid? Like, it sounds like, have you been dancing the longest? And okay, I'll stop there. Have you been dancing the longest out of all the 4 quadruple things that you are now a threat in?
Yeah, that was like my introduction into, entertainment. Was I saw my mom dancing with her friends in the living room, when I was a little kid. I used to come downstairs early and they would be down there practicing their routines, doing like Paula Abdul stuff, Janet Jackson stuff. And I was just like, I want to do that. And my mom, actually was horrible at tap dance. So she tried to give me like a couple steps, and I took those steps and I went, I ran away with it. I was like, okay, here's a basketball. I was doing windmills the second day. Like that's how it kind of chose me. And so dance was my first introduction into the arts. And through dance, through tap in particular, which is my first love, is when I started to realize that other tap dancers did other things. And I began to gravitate towards those things, like comedy and choreography and singing, just storytelling on just a crazy historical level when you're watching, Bilbo James Robinson and the Nicholas Brothers and John Bubbles and, performers like that. Like I began to see the rich history of, what it meant to American history, being that jazz and tap dance kind of birthed beside each other and became one of the rare American first art forms in American history, starting down in 5 Points, New York. That's pretty much where the tap dance genre began, was a collection of different cultures coming over here for opportunity, and they were bringing their cultural dances, and tap was kind of formulated through a bunch of different ideals and ways of living and customs. And William Henry Lane was the first person to put all of those together in a manner in which we call it tap dance. So, at an early age, I was like, oh man, tap is the thing that were the keys to the car. And then once I started to learn about all those guys and all the history, I was just like, all right, cool. I want to be like them. And what they did was everything under the sun, especially being, Black in the early 1900s. You had to do everything under the sun. You just had to. You had to be, extraordinary in order to get, in the door. And it's not that people were doing that just to get in the door. It's just something they were passionate, about. And, so tap was my first introduction into that, which, once I got in the door, the floodgates open, and I was just like, oh, well, tap can help me do choreography. Tap can help me, be on a TV show. Tap can help me be in a Broadway show. It can help me be in a movie. It can help me write a script. It can help me do everything. It's the life source. It's the infinity stone, I mean, that's how I feel about it.
It's rhythm, vibrations, dancing. I still think, I've said this a couple times on the podcast already, that dancing is one of the most primitive forms of communication, right? Because it transcends language, it transcends race and gender and everything. It's just, you get together and you feel something with the people you're in the room with, and you're going on a journey. And that's my version of spirituality. That's what I love. I love especially with strangers, going on journeys with people in learning stories, seeing stories, and moving. Movement is just the best. And that's why, like, little kids, you throw some music on and they're boogieing, they're dancing.
They got it.
And then, the embarrassment, the shame, that is taught. But I think, no, I'm serious. I like a shame, that stuff is taught. And then if you could have a kid that was just like, all right, everywhere you go, you're boogieing and moving around. And that's why I love what you said a second ago about like stopping in the subway and changing people's lives, talking to people, these little kids who are coming by who may have never seen a tap dancer up close or even at all. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, that's what I like, because I feel it. I can feel it in my whole body.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
That's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about.
So then going into, let's see, so you're dancing, you're in New York, and then so how did the whole Mariah Carey situation come around?
Oh, well, just in the early 2000s, late 90s, that was the big burst of the boy band thing and the pop star. So, of course, I'm watching MTV. I'm looking at all these shows, VH1, making it a band, making a pop star. I'm like, well, man, shoot, that'd be cool to be a pop star, too. And I can tap dance. I was like, maybe I'll be the first, tap dancing Usher or Justin Timberlake or something crazy like that out there. Or maybe I could be in a boy band and, maybe it could be like the Rat Pack with that. So I was just like, all right, cool. Well, I definitely wanted to, check off backup dancing on my list of things to do. Because I grew up watching, like I said, the pop movement and, the backup dancers and the young choreographers. That was just so appealing to me. So I came to New York and I was taking hip hop classes too. I was like, all right, cool. Like, let me get into these classes. So maybe one day I can be on MTV or backup dance for a major artist. Because that's what I was, consuming so much on TV. And I was in math class at Marymount Manhattan College. And I had like 2 math classes back to back. I don't know how I had that going on that semester, but I got a call during the first one. And my agents were like, hey, there's a audition for Mariah Carey, in an hour. And I was like, I got math class. Like, I was like, and math is my worst subject. I was like, I kind of got to be here. Because when it comes to math, like, I'm like a musician. Once we get beyond 8, I'm like, oh my goodness, I start to struggle a little bit. So, so I was like, all right, cool. Well, I'll try to make it. I told my teacher, I was like, if you, give me the assignment, I'll have it done by tomorrow. And then I didn't even get a chance to tell my next teacher that I was going to, bail and go to this audition. And, it's like Mariah Carey. So I'm like, it's one of those, like, it's a shot in the dark. It's going to be like 300 dancers there. In this particular case, there were about, 300 dancers there. They were only looking for one person. Wow. Because I guess the other dancers from LA had already flown out. So they already had the job. And I was like, is this really going to be worth it? The choreographer was a choreographer that I really wanted to actually learn from and perform with, more so than, Mariah Carey at that point in time. I can remember on my very first theater job, Justin Timberlake did his first like solo performance on the MTV VMAs. And I was like, well, who's the choreographer? Who's the choreographer? And it was Marty Kudelka, who was the choreographer for Mariah Carey at this time. So I was just like, well, if anything, let me go get a free class. I'll go get a free class. Like, if I get cut, at least I got a free class from the, the choreographer that I really wanted to, rock with. And so I get to the audition. I make it past the first round. Okay, cool. It's cool. Make it past the second round. All right. So we in here. So and each time I make it, past a cut or a round, we were learning more of the combination. And I was just like, the song was so fly. It was Shake It Off. One of my favorite songs that she's, ever put out, even though she has a laundry list of songs, but that's one of my favorite ones. Just the pocket was crazy. I was just like, oh, I'm having a time of my life. I don't even care if I get this or not. I'm just rocking and I'm feeling good and I'm not in math class. So, and I messed around and got it. I was like, wait a minute. Like, I got it. And then we started rehearsing that day. And then all the dancers from LA that had gotten the job, these are all these guys and gals that I have seen on social media and on YouTube performing. They were like, celebrity backup dancers. And I was just like, what? I've been seeing this person on TV for the past 5 years, seeing this person dancing Janet Jackson, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake. Like, I'm just like, and I'm in a room with like all of those heavyweights and I'm like, the puppy. And I was just like, it had nothing to do with tap dance, although tap dance in some way, shape or form, got me to that position. And, you know, I was just like, now I'm in the sneakers. Now I'm dancing with Mariah Carey, with the choreographer that I always wanted to work with, Marty Kudelka, who's now a good friend of mine. And I was just like on the promo tour for Emancipation of Mimi for like a couple months, dancing with Mariah Carey. And I was just like, I mean, I would fly. We flew out to do Ellen one day, early in the morning, and I flew back in, and then I went to class. And the way that Ellen is taped, I went to class. The way Ellen is taped, after we filmed, it came on like a couple hours later. So I went back to class, and it was on while I was in class. And they were like, "When'd you do that?" I was like, "This morning." I was like, "I was in LA this morning." You know, we did it like that, and so that was. I mean, and then after Mariah Carey, that's when I started to backup dance for more people. You know, Busta Rhymes, Salt-n-Pepa, Common, like all that crazy stuff. So I had a good backup dancing phase. And then after that, like I kind of got my fix. I was like, you know, there's really only one choreographer I wanted to work with. And, you know, Mariah Carey is up there on the food chain when it comes to, you know, artists. So I was just like, all right, well, I checked all those boxes off. So let's get something else in there. But yeah, man, that's my Mariah Carey story. Crazy, right?
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And I think I attribute a lot of the success there to what you said. You're like, well, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to go get a free class from one of my favorite choreographers. Right. And that's some of the advice that I've heard over years and years and years is like, don't go in there thinking the job is yours. Don't walk away from it thinking you lost the job. The job was never yours. Just go in there and embrace what makes you different, have fun. And this goes right back to what you were saying a second ago was you do it because you dance because you love it. You're passionate about it. And so you're just there to meet these people. You're not there to get the job. And lo and behold, you got the job one out of 300, right?
Oh, man. I tell you, it's still like baffling to me. Like, I'm like, yeah, I did. I did that. Like, that's one of those crazy things that you're just like, all right, well, I didn't wake up that morning thinking I wanted to go backup dance for Mariah Carey. It just, the opportunity presented itself. And, you know, like you said, you know, I just kind of step into any situation in my entire life with a sponge-like mentality. I always want to learn from the situation. Even when I have self-tapes for film and TV and stuff like that, like I'm obsessed with the craft. I'm so obsessed with the craft that the outcome means nothing to me. Like it's just I set the bar so high for myself and how much I devote and surrender myself to the craft that's what means the most to me. And like, you know, if there's a benefit at the end of the tunnel, you know, after I dive in and immerse myself, then that's cool. If not, if I feel good about, you know, the work that I've done, then that's good enough for me, you know?
But especially in New York, when you're at point A and you think you're going to point C or D, when you get to B, it's nothing like what you anticipated just because of possibly who you even ran into or past dancing on the subway, right? Like there's all these opportunities to change your course. And then I love that you just embrace the opportunities when they present themselves, because all of a sudden you're finding yourself at the other end of the tunnel, like you were saying, and you've got all this trail of success behind you because you just said yes when the opportunities presented themselves. And you're like, all right. So that is fascinating to me. And I think a great lesson for everybody to take away too. And side note though, you said you were in college for math. What were you in college for originally? For performing?
I went to college for communication arts.
All right. So math
was one of those electives that I had to get out the way. And in one semester I had like 2 classes because I think I just forgot to, you know, get one in. So I was like, I'll do a double class one semester. And it was great. I got a good grade, but I'm telling you, like I actually like had to like history. I love history, science, you know what I mean? All that crazy stuff. That's my stuff. But when it comes to math, man, I start sweating. I start sweating a little bit. I start sweating.
That's one of my
stress. I can't feel math. Like I can feel music math. Music math, I can feel that all day. But like book math, like I can't feel it. Like it's not like I can't musically connect to it because there's nothing musically, you know, jumping off the page at you. It's just you have to know it.
I get it. That's one of my still recurring stress dreams of being at the end of some curriculum, like a college curriculum, and realizing that I missed a class that I should have taken years ago and not being able to graduate. That's legit one of the dreams I have right now.
Me in a nutshell, right there.
We're going to take a short break. Stay tuned for more of the episode. I was going to ask a question about like the being in the business of Broadway, lots of rejection, and in New York, I mean, especially like it kind of prepares you for I mean, you're on the subway and people were walking by you and not even acknowledging your presence a lot of time. But I think the answer to that question, my question originally was like, did you get prepared? Was that experience, blah, blah, blah. But the way that you were just talking, I don't think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem to me like rejection is rejection in your mind. It's just a different path to another opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, 110,000% what you just said. Early on, I was not audition. I was trying out for my middle school basketball team. And I got cut 2 years in a row. So the first year I got cut, I was like, all right, cool. Like, you know, I'm one of the shorter guys on the team. I mean, but I'm nice though. Like I'm nice. You know what I mean? It's not like I was trash. And I'm still nice. But I didn't get it. So I worked real hard. Like me and my pops, we were in the driveway like till like wee hours in the morning, like almost every night after I got cut the first time for like a whole year, because I was just like, I know I'm good enough to make the team. You know, just the way the chips fell, you know, I didn't make the team that particular in that first year. And in the second year when I got cut, I was like, man, it took it out of me because I knew I was one of the best ones trying out. I just didn't make the team for whatever reason. And I think that was the first time in my entire life that I had actually been told that I wasn't good enough. I mean, like, because when it comes to anything in life up until, you know, that point in middle school, like I was the only guy in dance class. A lot of times I was the only guy in theater class, only guy in acting class, only guy at the dance competitions. And so since you're the only guy, and in a lot of cases, the only, you know, Black male guy in certain instances, oftentimes you kind of, they want you to go through because they know that you're a rare bird. And so I think that was the first time, like being in a gym full of, you know, people of all races, all heights, all weights, all talent levels, where I didn't have the advantages that I had in the arts, of being like the only guy. So the first year when I got cut, I was like, all right, so I gotta work hard. I gotta work super hard. Then the second year when I got cut, I was just like, all right, so one thing I'll never do is I'll never let somebody be in charge of my happiness. Because I know everybody's been through this, but I'd seen it in movies so many times, but I had never felt, and I still to this day don't think I've ever felt that. I've never felt what it felt like to walk up to a piece of paper and not see your name on it. And I was just like, it killed me. The second year, like, it didn't hurt as bad the second year because, like, you know, once you get stung, you know, you build up a little bit of armor. But it's still the second year when I didn't see my name up there, I was just kind of like, I made that change in my mind in terms of what my mission statement was and how I would control, you know, the outcome of any situation that I was in terms of, you know, situations where I wasn't the gatekeeper. And from that point on, my mindset changed. And then it's funny because my freshman year of high school, I made the basketball team. I didn't stop working. I worked even harder than I did after I got cut the second time. I made the basketball team my freshman year of high school. And then I got bumped up to varsity midway through the year. That's how hard I worked.
Wow.
And so I was just like, I was the only freshman, one of the only freshmen on varsity. I think it was like maybe two of us that got bumped up. And I was out for blood, man. I was out for blood. I didn't care how old you were. I didn't care how tall you were. Like I almost had a chip on my shoulder because I knew I was in the arts. And I took it personal. I was like, all right, well, look, this isn't even my first love. I was like, I just love to play basketball. So I'm about to wreck everybody in this gym. I don't care if you're 50 years old, 40 years, I'm about to wreck all y'all because I'm a tap dancer. I was like, that should hurt even more if I destroy you and you know that I'm going to theater class next. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that should destroy you. You know what I mean? So after that, I just turned into like this machine. And I just was like, all right, cool. Like now I understand what my superpower is. I went through getting cut twice because, you know, I had to find out that one of my powers was resilience, you know, relentlessness. I I hadn't really, tapped into those things at that point in my life. And that's when I was just like, I needed that. Like, I needed that to break me up so that way I could kind of, build the coat of armor that I have now. Even I take it all the way back to that. Because nothing in my life, no audition, getting cut from anything in the arts, nothing ever made me feel as crazy as getting cut from the basketball team in middle
Wow.
school. So that's kind of like, I mean, that's kind of been my journey. That's how I have the mindset that I have now. And, like I said, and no audition, no for anything, even no matter how bad I want it, nothing phases me. It doesn't shake me. And I try to tell other people about this too. Go into it for the work, go into it for the love, go into it for the craft, and you'll always be satisfied. If you let yourself down, then, that's the biggest detriment that you can possibly, have going on. If you really want something, don't worry about, things outside of you that you can't control. And so, yeah, man, that's why I'm here today. All the things that I've done in my entire life, they're blessings. They're not, because, they were supposed to happen. It was always going to happen like that. It's, I can't, I can't tell you to give me something that is not destined for me to have. And I just, I wasn't in the cards. I wasn't supposed to be on the middle school basketball team because, the universe was like, if he's not on that, then he's going to be on varsity. We're going to balance it out, and if he still stays in the fight, if he works even harder, then we'll give him double, on the other side of things. And, have a very much, yin yang type of thing, up, down, gravity, all that kind of stuff. If you stay the course, if you really believe in yourself, if you have that resilience, if you have that relentless, attitude, inertia towards everything you want, all your dreams. And like I said, something as silly as, your name not being on a piece of paper means nothing. You know what I mean?
Oh, I absolutely know what you mean. And I agree with you too, because the resilience, the armor that you built when your name wasn't on that piece of paper, who knows where that, how many times that came into play, and that you use that exact resilience to get where you are now, a Tony nominee alongside some of the best people on Broadway, right? Like Ramin Karimloo and Beanie Feldstein and Jane Lynch, like this cast, yourself included, some of the best people I've ever seen put together. And the reviews, I mean, the people talking about your performance is just phenomenal. Obviously, well deserved and well needed. I mean, going out then 8 shows a week alongside this cast is the audition for Funny Girl. Is that one of those things where you were like, maybe I'm gonna let this hurt my feelings if I don't get it? Or like, is it one of those, like, is there anything now where you're like, you know what, I really, really want this and it's gonna sting if I don't get it?
You know what, Funny Girl, we were preparing for season 4 of Manifest, and the schedule was like bonkers.
Yeah.
So I think, and we were also rehearsing for the Tonys, because me and my cuz, who's also from North Carolina, D. Watts, we were doing a special performance on the Tonys last year, and so I was trying to figure out Manifest schedule, wardrobe, all that crazy stuff. And then we were in rehearsals for that. And so, there was a couple auditions that I had, self-tapes that I had, intermittently throughout that whole process. Funny Girl was one of them. And so, my agents will send me something and I'll look over it and I never want to take on any contract or give anything the time of day if I can't create some kind of change, with the character or with the project, or, bring something that I feel like, hasn't really been done, on a certain platform. And a lot of that is from a historical standpoint too. Like, I like to bring history to a lot of projects, not to beat you over the head and be like, history, but in some way, shape or form, if I can give you a piece of something that I'm passionate about historically, to preserve something and to keep something alive, such as tap dance and what it is to be an African-American tap dancer,
Mm-hmm.
In the ethos of entertainment, then, I usually take on projects like that. And like I said, I don't have to be like an Eddie Ryan character who is a choreographer to do that. I can be, Adrian Shannon, over at Manifest too, and still be able to kind of give a historical perspective. When it came to Funny Girl and that role, I was like, oh, boom. It was Eddie. Like, I feel like an Eddie already. Like, I was like, if somebody called me Eddie, like, it makes, like, I feel like somebody named Eddie. You know what I mean? Eddie Rhymes, super cool name. And I was like, oh, and he's a choreographer too. I was familiar with the story Funny Girl, but I hadn't really, dove into many of the characters outside of, Fanny Bryce. You know what I mean? That's what the show was all about when I was a kid. And I never really watched the movie. I just kind of saw it in bits and pieces, maybe in a hotel room or in the background or something like that. Like, I had never seen the movie in its entirety. But I was just like, yeah, this is an opportunity, especially since the character, previously was Caucasian, now, with the character being Black, there's possibly a good chance to really give audiences a different perspective of what the relationship between Eddie and the world of Fanny Bryce would have been back then. Like I said, without beating people over the head, seamlessly and effortlessly giving you the history in a way that, is really filled with integrity. And it's just rich culturally too, as well. So I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll audition. Like, this feels right. This feels cool. And it's musical comedy too. The last show that I did was definitely not a musical comedy because it was a soldier's story at Roundabout just before the pandemic. And yeah, there was, this the exact opposite of a musical comedy. But nonetheless, I love telling stories like that. Diving into Black history in theater is one of my favorite things. And I was like, all right, it'd be cool to kind of do something that's a completely different than a soldier's play. And boom, Funny Girl. Go in there. I auditioned, self-tape first. You know what I mean? Got the call back maybe a couple weeks later. Went in, read with Beanie and Michael Mayer, the director, and didn't hear anything again for a while. Actually saw Beanie backstage when we were performing at the Tonys. And she gave me this big hug. She didn't know if I got the part. She didn't know who got the part. But when she gave me the big hug, I was just like, oh man, maybe she knows something. Maybe I got the part. But she ended up not even knowing anything. And the next day after the Tonys, I found out that there was some rumblings that, I was close to getting the part. And then maybe a couple of days after that, I heard that I got the part. And I was like, oh man, this is like super cool. Like, I would have never thought that, I would be, Eddie Ryan in Funny Girl. And I immediately was like, all right, cool. Well, what else are we working with other than the scenes that I'll audition with? And then how am I going to pull this off between film and Manifest and rehearsing at the same time? And like the entire, industry kind of caught on that I was about to take on this role. And so did, my producers over at Manifest. So everybody was on the phones trying to figure out schedule and everything like that. Trying to see if I could even do it, make it work. The contracts would line up, all this crazy stuff. Cause I'm just like all those early performers that I was discussing before. It's like, I want to do everything. Like, I never want to, be limited to one thing. Like, if I can pull off doing 8 projects at the same time, like, I would rather do that than sacrifice, 7 of them just to do one. I'm built like that. I'm built for it, man. I've been preparing for this stuff my entire life. So I want it all. And I don't want it all for me. Like, I want it all for, the performers, the African-American performers that paved the way for me. A lot of them didn't get opportunities like this. So, who am I to turn anything down, or who am I to not make something work or try to make something work? Every time I step on a project, step into a character, I'm breathing their voices into those situations. And as much as I can do that, the better off it will be for the next person that will do the same thing. We have to keep their voices alive. We have to keep their contributions to theater, music, sports, arts, acting. We have to keep their voices alive because sadly, a lot of those guys in the early 1900s, the history books didn't write about them.
Right.
We knew about everybody else. But those guys were getting cut out of films, weren't getting top billing, because of the color of their skin. And they really suffered, as a result of where society was with race. They suffered because of that back then, yet they were some of the greatest entertainers of all time. greatest entertainers of the world. We're talking about people, who tap dance was the hip hop of the early 1900s.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was the hip hop of the early 1900s. Everybody was tap dancing. And then when Lindy Hop was exploding too, it was fusing. And then Lindy Hop, like, it was just, without tap dancers, a lot of this stuff would look completely different. So I'm just like, I have to pay homage to them every chance I get. And, Funny Girl was that project for me. I was like, all right, well, I can really breathe life into, in particular, Baby Lawrence and John Bubbles, with the character of Eddie Ryan. So, yeah, man, it's been a joyride. I got the part, and I was like, let's get it. Let me get in there and figure out who Eddie is, because, I wanted to really, give him some layers that, may have not been there before. I wanted to figure out how to implement the history, like I said before, without, making it a story about, Black history.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to have a good time and just bring smiles to people's faces, especially after the 2 years that we've all gone through with COVID. So yeah, man, it was one of those things. If I got it, I was going to do a lot with it. If I didn't get it, I would have kept my foot on the gas in hopes of other opportunities that I could, kind of bring the history through with as well. So yeah, man, I'm super grateful, super thankful, super blessed. And yeah, I get to show up with Jane Lynch and Ramin and Beanie and the ensemble. And man, it's a party on stage every night, man. Sometimes I forget that it would be a travesty to call it work, because it's not really work, man. It's play.
When you and D Watts write you become a pentuple threat. Is that what it is when you're five? Yeah, when you're a pentuple threat, and you and D Watts have written your show about the history of dance in America, then I will be in front row producing the shit out of that for you. So there you go.
Hey, let's get it.
All right, so I'm going to wrap up with 3 standard closing questions that I ask everybody to end the episodes. The first, very simply, is just what motivates you?
Kind of like what I was just talking about before, all those great and phenomenal performers who paved the way for me. I wake up every day and my responsibility is to, make sure they're not forgotten and make sure they're celebrated.
I love that. Okay, so then what advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
The advice that I would give to my younger self is to establish purpose. But that was one of the things that I was looking for a long time. Like, what is my purpose? Because my younger self, I thought my purpose was what my idol's purpose was, for all the people that I looked up to. And I didn't really understand that. No, I had to find my own purpose, my own meaning, in this crazy game, we call it life. I had to figure out what that was for myself. Once I figured that out, then, as I said before, the floodgates open. That's the advice I would give to my younger self. And that's the advice I would give to, young folks, around me, who are looking for, a way to break through.
All right. So the last question is the hardest one. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
Kelly's Last Jam.
With Tanya Pinkins?
Gregory Hines.
That's right. That's
Tanya
right.
Pinkins,
That's
George
right.
C. Wolfe. That show was, that's the one. That's the one.
I hear you. Well, thank you so much. Make sure to visit me online at thetheaterpodcast.com. Show your support at thetheaterpodcast.com/Patreon, Patreon. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at theater_podcast, at facebook.com/officialtheaterpodcast, TikTok at The Theater Podcast. Leave a rating, leave a review, share with your friends. This has been edited by Well-Rounded Hoodlum Productions, and thank you to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music, who just dropped a new album, by the way. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. North Carolina, stand up.
North Carolina!
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.